I'm not sure whether the countdown gives us a building expectation of effect or not.
I was going goosebumps. I was ready to go. That was wonderful.
Anyway, I thought I'd do it just to see what you thought of it. Anyway, welcome everybody, including our live viewers, and particularly welcome to the members of our panel. We have Dred from British Columbia, Guy from Manchester, UK, Esther from the Midlands, UK, and Frank from Kentucky, and Dr. Ty also from the environs of Kentucky, or whichever state.
There.
Yes, whichever state he's based in today. So thank you very much, and here we go with our items to review. And there's an interesting selection this week because, as you know, the war in Ukraine has attracted quite a few calls for peace from various religious leaders, including the Pope, his popeliness. And not only that, but several clergy in the Russian Orthodox Church, but outside of Russia, have defected. Some of them have gone to the Ukraine Orthodox Church. So this is not good news for the Russian Orthodox Church. But the worst aspect of it is that since the Putin and Kirill-sponsored war has been going on in Ukraine for some weeks, it's now spread Moldova, which is the country that borders Ukraine to the west. This is not good news. So what do you have to say about that, guys?
Well, the war is spreading like religion.
Spreading war. Religiously sponsored war.
I mean, the problem goes back, doesn't it, to a bunch of colonists, of Russian colonists who were put in Moldova during the Soviet era. I don't know the origins of that. And the same applies to the Kaliningrad enclave of Russia, which is between, I think, Germany and Poland, or Poland and Lithuania. Right. And this is an area which could easily be a problem in the future.
Yes, centered on St. Petersburg.
So what's happened is that during the Soviet imperialist era, these enclaves were created, and now during the post-Soviet Putin imperialist era, he's trying to sort of recover them and consolidate them. It's bad news. It's bad news because it spells more problems for, well, the countries in the vicinity.
And contrary to what Putin wishes, which is to push NATO back, what he's actually done is inspired Sweden and Finland to try to get to join in to NATO.
Yeah. That's a direct result of Putin's aggression.
Yes.
Good.
I mean, the thing about the churches, I think we discussed that last week. Or was it the week before?
It's an ongoing item, yeah.
So was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace, or was he trying to juggle both of those?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's because what he actually did was he appealed for peace, mentioning no aggressors. He used, what was the expression? Yes, I know. What was the expression he used? He didn't call it a dictator, autocrat, something like that. We all knew he meant Putin. He didn't name him. So he appealed for peace without naming the aggressor.
Oh.
Well, I suppose that if you're trying to create peace, you've got to be diplomatic. So I'll hand that to him.
But of course, waving the magic mitre doesn't work. And as the direct representative of the Christian God, Pope Francis obviously is holding a stick.
And as the speaker for God, Can he not ask God to intervene? Can he not ask God to just come and stop the fight? Why does he have to pray for peace? He can easily say, God, come on in and stop the fight, you know? That would just solve this ongoing war.
Absolutely. Isn't God supposed to be omnipotent? Shouldn't that be an easy thing for him? After all, he created a whole universe. Mm-hmm. So stopping a war is, an afternoon's work, isn't it? Okay, moving on to Afghanistan. Now, you may remember last week we reported on a murderous attack on a boys' school, which was conducted by the Islamic State group. And, of course, Afghanistan is currently governed by the Taliban. So this was a Muslim-on-Muslim initiative. And unfortunately, what I've got to report is they've done it again. On Thursday, 4 explosions took place in Afghanistan. One tore through a Shia Muslim mosque. 31 people were killed, 87 wounded. The Islamic State group admitted that was them, and they said it was carried out using a remotely detonated booby-trapped bag when the mosque was packed with worshippers. In other words, to cause the most harm to the worshippers and the least harm. There was no suicide in this attempt.
Wow.
And they said that it wasn't brave, they're not trying to become martyrs. And they said that they were doing these attacks to avenge the death of their former leader and spokesman, which happened not too long ago. So that was 2 of the attacks. There's been a third, all on the same day, in a police station near Kunduz. A vehicle was blown up, leaving 4 dead and 18 injured. And then also a Taliban vehicle was hit by a roadside mine, killing 4 Taliban members and wounding a 5th. In addition to that, there was a mine planted in a Niaz Bek area of Kabul, which wounded 2 children. This is lovely stuff, isn't it, eh?
Mm-hmm.
God is great.
God is great, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like when you get a buy 2 for price of 1 deal from the CIA, you have to use it. So I can imagine they're just going through the stocks.
Going through the stock.
Well, and don't forget, this is a religion of peace on both sides, presumably.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. I think the boys' school was a Shia and Hazara school, if I remember correctly.
I believe
that's a minority that have been oppressed for a long time, really, in Afghanistan.
Yes. But why does their God require these people to fight for him? Why does he need them to go to war and to, kill each other on his behalf? If God is this big almighty creator, he can do what he likes whenever he likes. If people go against his wishes, he can sort them out by himself. He doesn't need people to kill others for him. If you have to kill on behalf of your God, then chances are he's not as powerful as you make him out to be.
Or such a nice guy.
Well, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or we created him in our image.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If that were the case, all of this is explained.
Yeah.
We can sort of look at this.
If God was really interested in killing people, he'd just be popping heads, like blowing up.
We can also kind of look at this as a time capsule. We have basically, a state of arrested development due to conflict in this location, and the God that they're worshiping is very similar to Old Testament Judaic God, who was very much
Yeah.
me, them, kill the enemies, take them as slaves. I'll
Yeah.
give you instructions on how to take them and keep them, and when to punish them, and how much you can beat them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
that God, and we're not seeing much of an evolution from that area because we've never given them the opportunity to, or they never really had the opportunity to develop outside of it.
No.
But that is Christianity in its most primal form. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, the Old Testament Christianity. Yeah. Well, that's such a good question as to why can't God do something about it? Because presumably, as an omnipotent being, instead of getting them to kill each other, shouldn't he be able to just sort of sow a seed in their brains? After all, he's sown a seed of worship him and, obey him. Wouldn't it just tinker with their brains a little bit? And
he's all-knowing.
Yes.
He's all-knowing. So he has preempted all of this to happen. He has seen it to happen. So he could have... there are lots of questions, just so many questions.
I think we were talking about this earlier today, but like it wouldn't be an extraordinary thing for God to just show up and tell us if we're on track with his message or not.
Yes.
Because showing up and giving us objective proof that he exists doesn't necessarily mean that we'll worship him. The devil, for example, or jinns from the Quran know God exists, yet choose to disobey him or go against his words. So knowing that God exists doesn't mean that you'll obviously be for God. So if that's the case, show us who you are, where you are, and then maybe have like a weekly podcast where you're like, oh, by the way, I'm for this. That bombing I wasn't supporting. This I was. I'll see you on Jimmy Fallon. See you later, guys.
And here we are. We have to make sure.
Yeah.
Like Trump
I
did.
guarantee you there will be no atheists at that point, but there may not be as many Christians. I'm just saying.
And here we are. Instead of God, we have to make do with John Richards.
I mean, the story
I'm not accepting the appointment.
The story of Lucifer in Christianity is of this angel. He was in the presence of God, so he saw God, he witnessed God, he dined. Well, they don't dine in heaven apparently, but he had this direct contact, but he still chose to come in opposition to God. Not just him and his buddies, the other angels. So just what Dr. Ty was saying, even if God does show himself to exist, it's not a guarantee that we will all be, going, bowing down to him and worshiping him. Oh no.
Yeah.
The test is still there. So show us the evidence, and you'll see the results. Then you can truly blame us. Don't blame us out of ignorance, but show up, reduce harm by making it objectively clear, and then see what happens. I guarantee you nothing.
Meanwhile, we have to put up with his agents, don't we? And we've got one in this country, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who claims to know what God's wishes are.
What his nature is.
That's it. What his nature is. That was the expression. Thank you, Guy. And we are here, as I was telling you before we started recording or live streaming, we are here getting the fullfact.org to check on how our Archbishop knows God's nature. So it'll be interesting to see how that initiative develops.
Well, maybe it'll be like Kent Hovind, though, who says it's the burden of proof is on you to prove that he doesn't.
Yeah, I had a run-in with Kent Hovind.
Yes, I was watching that early on today.
Were you? Yes, it was fun because the poor man, he's so deluded, but he's sort of trapped in his delusion because it's his income as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. There's only so many things. Even if I was paid for it, there's only so much stuff I can believe. I think it's just for Kevin Hovind, he's never given himself the option to think anything else.
We should encourage him to join the Clergy Project.
Yeah.
I've met the guy and chatted with him some. He is a very capable guy. I look at him and see a great waste. There's so many things he would have been really good at, but he chose religion, Christian evangelism.
Religion and tax evasion. Yes, that's right.
Religion and tax evasion. They go hand in hand.
Lured to the dark side of the force.
Oh, yeah, they do go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand.
Frank, you've also met Dwayne Gish, haven't you? Who is
Dwayne is a class act as an individual, as a human being. Really a very pleasant fellow to be around.
Yeah.
Can make fun of himself as well as he can make fun of others. And when he's making fun of you, you're not the slightest insulted. I mean, he was a really
a warm human being. Yeah,
absolutely.
And Kent, unfortunately, is his pupil.
Yeah,
He knows.
He's a cold fish, though, by comparison.
Right. Okay.
He doesn't have the charm that Gish had.
Yeah.
Or the believability.
Yeah.
But now Gish is the inventor of the Gish Gallop.
Yes, that's right.
You know,
that's right.
Put him behind the podium, and he has a role to play, and he played it really well.
Yes. Anyway, sticking with the US of A, since we've moved over there in the last bit of chat. Here's an article about one Elena Browning, who is everything a mother would want if she's considering giving up her child. Because Elena and her husband have a stable income and a nice home, and they've been foster parents in the past. They have a 5-year-old daughter, and they could conceive again if they wanted to, but they felt they would go for adoption next to extend their family. So, recognizing that the process would be complicated, they chose the Alabama Family Adoption Services, which is a private child placement agency. And it seemed to be the best option to them because it wasn't faith-based, and it even appeared to be the only agency in the state that worked with same-sex couples. So she was hoping for the best. But she quickly found out from the Alabama Family Adoption Services that there was a problem. They said, "I'm sorry, we could not work with you. We are not specific about one's faith, but the biological families that we work with do request that our adoptive families have a spiritual life." And Elena is an atheist.
Oh, man.
Well, now you just said something that, leading up to this moment, I was really distressed that an organization would make that kind of a halt, and say you can't do it. But what you just said was that the parents of the children that are up for adoption have specified that.
Yes.
If that's really true, at least for those parents and those kids, I can understand why the organization would say what they said. But I find it hard to believe that any and all of the people that have put children up for adoption would say that. But again, like what I'm saying is, it's tough to, in my mind, blame the organization if that is the condition on which the children they have for adoption were obtained. What do you think?
The thing is, if you put your children up for adoption, you let them go. I mean, you can't. It's like saying, well, I'm selling my house, but you can't paint it green after I leave. I mean, come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the thing that strikes me here is that the principle that should be motivating adoption societies is the paramount interest of the child's welfare.
Yeah.
And therefore, from our point of view, we think that this couple is fine, and we think that the child's welfare would be, would be enhanced. And I agree with Dread Pirate. Yeah, it's you can't control what happens to your child that you've given away for adoption or has been taken away from you for probably good reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with that. I'm just saying it tempers my anger for the organization if that's something that the organization and the parents putting up the children had agreed to or committed to doing. But if this goes to court, what Dread Pirate said, it would be argued, I would hope, and I would hope that argument would prevail.
Yeah.
Because you're right, you're turning loose. You really don't have any more rights once you've done that as a parent. But it's more complicated than I was thinking it was.
I think it was an interesting case a few years back in the UK where a Catholic adoption society closed its doors because it refused to place children with gay couples. I think I'm right in remembering, and that was quite an an interesting advance. The law was saying you've got to place children where their interests are going to be best protected, without reference to whether the adoptive parents are gay or straight.
It is absolutely heartbreaking to hear things like this, considering the number of children in the care system that need a loving home. Most of these children, to be fair, they don't care. They just want to be loved. I follow a couple on Instagram. A gay couple. They're both Caucasian men, and they've adopted this young girl who is a black girl. And just to see her thrive, to see them do things with her, it is so beautiful to watch. And I am completely certain that she will get the best, if you know what I mean. Most of these children they're not the things that we focus so much on, religion, sexuality. Children don't care. They just want someone to give them food, someone to hug them at night, someone to, just be there. That's all they need. And so lots of children just go in his care system and just never get to have a loving home. It's sad.
And refusing needy children perfect homes on the grounds that they should have a spiritual life. I mean, what is that?
Well, they could simply become pastafarians. I would give them my blessing.
I personally don't even support the idea that children should be introduced to religion at really young ages. I mean, I was traumatized as a child in the Christian religion. When they would take us to church, and we would be forced to watch movies about hellfire, what's going to happen to us when we die, and God is not happy with us, and we're all fallen angels. And then when we're done watching the movies, they will do an altar call, right, for youngsters, for us children, to give our lives to Christ, and we will go out there crying our eyes out because we have just finished watching a movie that shows what's going to happen to us when we die. How do you make children give their lives to Christ? What kind of sick mentality is that? Asking children to come out and receive Jesus Christ.
Yeah. When you think about every TV show you watch nowadays has the viewer discretion is advised disclaimer before it, that people under age 14 should be aware of sexual content, language, violence, and all the rest of it. And yet you don't have that for religion. There should be believer discretion is advised.
Yes.
We shouldn't allow them to do scary movies and then try and offer them a bogus solution to their fear. It's ludicrous.
Yeah, it's fixing a problem that doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's this whole thing of they talk about the gay agenda. If there is a gay agenda, I really don't know anything about it. and this idea that they're trying to turn children gay.
Yeah.
Teachers are trying to. I don't know if there is a gay agenda. Honestly, I've got no clue what this is all about.
We're going to address that in a minute. There's another item further down the agenda here. But I want to stay with the US at the moment because there's another issue going on up in Washington State, not far from you, Dred, just the other side of the border.
Yep. Because
there's a high school coach working for the High School of Bremerton, and he has been praying. He's been praying at the end of a match. He's been going, or in the middle of a match, he's been going to what they call the 50-yard line and thanking God and generally being on his knees and generally going through a full act of prayer. Now,
how humble to do it in front of an entire stadium.
That's not what the Bible said.
The humility.
Yes. Well, he got told off for that because the school district figured that it could be construed that he was representing them. And of course, they're a secular school in a secular country, constitutionally secular country, and they didn't want any, legal blowback from appearing to endorse the prayerful activities of their employee. Now, so he was told to desist, and he did for a couple of months. This has been rumbling on since about 2015, but he came back 2 months later and started again because he'd consulted lawyers, and they said the school can't stop you worshipping. That's one of the items of the Constitution. So he got back to doing it. And then the next event was the district placed him on paid leave and evaluated his performance and recommended that he should be rehired for the next season.
Right.
So cutting this long story short, he's taken his case to court. It's a contest between two freedoms, the freedom to pray and the freedom not to have to.
Right. You have the freedom to pray. You don't have the freedom to be paid for praying.
Well, let me ask.
Or to force that prayer upon other people.
Does he
also true.
Does he make does the team go pray with him, or does he invoke the whole audience to pray, or is he just on his own doing this?
He says he doesn't insist that they should join him. However, a lot of them do voluntarily.
Yeah, because he's an authoritarian figure that controls their future.
Right.
Exactly.
So is this prayer done during his work time?
Yes, he's on pay.
He's not the only coach who could do that kind of job. I say replace him. You don't have a right to get paid for whatever you want to get paid for. When you get hired into a position, you are compromising to work to a job description.
Yep.
And if you don't meet that contract,
included in that job description.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, I'm not paying you to do that. Well, I have a constitutional right. You do, but I also have a constitutional right to decide who I get to hire for this position. Mm-hmm. And it's a capitalist society. Sorry.
I think it's rather comparable to Neil Parish, former MP of the House of Commons, who was looking at porn on his phone during his work time.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't see any difference. If you're doing that during a work time and you're praying, you're not doing your work.
Right.
Let me throw this out. Maybe more politicians should look at porn. Maybe there'd be less wars in Ukraine if everyone just kind of relaxed a little bit.
Yeah, but not during the work time.
That's right.
Though.
You don't want people whipping it out during work time.
I think there's some politicians that would benefit from it. But all right, I hear what you're saying. I definitely hear what you're saying. Some dictators can definitely benefit from it. I'll put it that way.
In the case of this particular coach, I mean, if I remember right, in the Sermon on the Mount, I think Jesus gives a little lesson on how to pray, and he says you do it in private. You go into a closet and you pray privately. It's not biblical what he's doing.
Yeah.
So I think he will surely. I can't say that, but I hope he doesn't prevail in court.
Well, I can bring you up to speed with that. But first, Dread, I want to clarify something. When you said whipping it out during work hours, you were referring
to the phone.
Yes. I just wanted to make sure. So, updating you. First of all, he filed suit against the school district in the federal district court, and he was arguing that it violated his constitutional rights to free speech. And that court affirmed his position. They agreed with him. And back in 2019, he tried to progress it to the Supreme Court. And they agreed with the lower court. And they said that it did violate his rights to free speech. No, they said that they agreed with the Bremerton School District for sacking him. Beg your pardon.
Okay.
Yeah. But so he's now moved up a level to the Supreme Court. And since, of course, 2019, the makeup of the Supreme Court has changed. Thank you, Donald. It's now a 6-3 conservative majority, and in recent terms has been more sympathetic to religious rights. So they are now re-evaluating this issue, and a decision is expected by the end of June. So watch this space. No doubt we'll come back and revisit it as it plows on.
It'll probably be the same day Roe versus Wade gets overturned.
Oh, God. Let's hope not. Yeah. Staying with the USA, there's an evangelist named David E. Taylor who operates a ministries that he calls Joshua Media Ministries International. And he's made a lot of money, and he's been accused of operating a cult-like faith. But he's branching out because up till now he's been based in Michigan, the state that's sort of mixed up with the lakes. But he's made so much money, he's recently purchased an $8.3 million mansion in Tampa, Florida. And although he hasn't announced yet how he plans to use this huge building, it's nearly 30,000 square feet, and it's on 6 acres of land. We're worried, some of us, that he's trying to spread Joshua Media Ministries to that state. And just to fill you with a bit more background, in the past few years, he's faced charges of financial corruption, sexual manipulation, and spiritual abuse. So that's another nice specimen. What do you think?
So this is Florida, you said, right?
Yeah, he's spreading out his ministry from Michigan to Florida, it seems.
So I say, release the crocodiles.
I mean, this particular gentleman has been in the news because there was a deposition he was under fairly recently. And it was the breakdown of what he uses the money for. That got a lot of people interested in this particular man. The Gucci belts, the designer clothes, and the judge had to ask the question: why do you buy the most expensive stuff? Why can you not buy the cheaper? He says, it's for my TV ministry. We've got to put out this persona on television, hence why he's got to have the best of the best. It's interesting to go check out this deposition. A lot of things were revealed because the whole idea why that deposition started off to begin with was a lady who'd been divorced. She got some money from the divorce, to the tune of, it was millions of dollars, and she gave most of that money to church. And she wanted more money, went to the husband to say, I want more. And the husband says, well, you got all that payout. What if you done all of giving it to the church? And, I think that was what spearheaded this deposition. So it's interesting to go see what he's all about. And I think with this man is watch this space, because there's a lot going on there. That little cult he runs.
Well, he's on YouTube. Check him out later.
I'm just checking it out now.
He
it
obviously
reminds me of
sorry, I was just going to say.
Go on.
I was just going to say very quickly that he obviously hasn't read the bit of the Bible that says about a rich man going through the eye of a needle.
Well, he's a really big
They
fellow.
don't read that.
Yeah, it reminds me of that other American evangelist preacher whose name just escapes me, who bought another expensive private jet. What was his name? And when asked why, he says, "Well, I can get closer to God, and I don't have the ordinary sort of people distracting me from
demons. The demons in the it says the demons in the plane.
Demons in the plane. That's right. Yes, he's talking about people there. What was his name?
There's more than one of them. Was it Joshua? What's his name? He's a Nigerian.
No. He's a friend to Kenneth Copeland.
Kenneth Copeland, that's the guy.
No, was it Kenneth Copeland? It was his
I
friend.
thought it was him.
Was it?
He's very proud of his very expensive airplanes. There's some small local regional airliners, airlines that can't afford the planes that he has bought.
Yeah. Gold stars, aren't they? The gold stars are these little planes called?
Before we move on, I just want to throw on a thought experiment. Like, we can look at a famous televangelist or a famous preacher. We can count the number of private jets they have, but it's equivalent to looking at someone with a fatty liver or really high cholesterol counts and being like, look at this thing. Look at this thing. This is a bad thing. Objectively, yes. But we're missing the bigger picture, which is that we've fostered an environment where these people can get this kind of money, where they can get this kind of attention, notoriety.
Tax-free.
And it's just as much as a fatty liver is indicative of a bad, healthy lifestyle. We currently have a poisoned society that's not employing critical thinking in the areas that it needs to, as vigorously as it ought to be done. And when I say ought to, I mean there's a moral obligation for us as critical thinkers to inspire that thinking in others, for it to be taught, for it to be followed and lectured in school, because it's not just something you innately have.
Bravo.
And because we failed to do that, we have this situation where we have this environment. And I think as much as it's easy to look at the problem or the symptom, let's also think about the solution, which is inspiring other people to think critically and thoughtfully in any capacity and every opportunity we have.
Yeah, I'll drink to that.
And just on that point, if I'm going to plug a new book coming out in September by Steve Novella and Jay and Bob Novella called The Skeptic's Guide to the Future. Nice. Pre-order it now, get the word out, get them on the bestsellers list, and that will be a surefire way to get more people engaged in critical thinking. It's The Skeptic's Guide to the Future.
We'll put it in the details underneath this video. Sure. Right. Leaving the US of A now, I'm moving to the UK. We've got an issue that's going on in a school. It's in Purley, near Croydon, if you know London at all. And what happened was, it's a Catholic school, but we have something called World Book Day. And on that day, an author called Simon James Green was invited to the school to talk to the boys and sign books. And it's a boys' school. And when the Catholic diocese, which is the Archdiocese of Southwark, heard about this, they banned the event. Why? Because Simon James Green, author, is gay.
Oh no.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
As
They
the
said-
neighbors would say.
They said that inviting him would fall outside the scope of what is permissible in a Catholic school, and it was potentially offensive to parents, past pupils, and wider members of the Catholic community. What nice.
I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop when they find out Jesus was gay too.
Yeah.
Well,
Ooh.
no reports have been made of his relationship with women, have they?
No.
This guy likes hanging out with dudes. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, the first thing occurs to me, of course, is that such opposition to having gays around is often associated with closet gays
Yeah.
trying to fend off criticism. And of course, you're talking here about allegedly celibate men making this.
Yes.
Right.
It's misdirection is what it is, right?
Just want to make sure everyone understands. God made Adam, then begrudgingly made Eve, and then made clothes second or third. And it was in that order. And it was only when they dressed themselves that he got very, very upset. But it was Eve who got dressed first. It was only until Adam got dressed that God was very, very upset at that point. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Right.
You passed over about the TikTok.
I did. Yeah. I'm thinking we're running out of time. In fact, we've already done our 40 minutes. We could just briefly touch on it. What's happened here is teachers have discovered TikTok, and many of them are woke, and they are making little videos to educate pupils about things like non-binaryism, and doctors, believe me, this is what it says, guessing the gender of newborn kids from their mere genitals. When what we should be doing, according to them, is waiting until people are old enough to pick a gender for themselves. And you can imagine that these little TikTok videos are causing some furore.
Right.
I'd say this as a closing thought. Everyone, when I was a kid, I was so glad I didn't have YouTube, because I would have made a lot of embarrassing videos that would probably keep me from getting my doctorate as I am now. But now that we have these technologies, they seem, how do I call it, ubiquitous, but not necessarily used at the same skill or contextual cultural depth as kids are using it now. So just because you have the tools doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to use it like a kid does with the same touch and gravitas. And a lot of times when I get a 14-page text message from my mom, when it should have been blocked out sentences at a time because for easier reading, you just sort of like, you roll your eyes and you go with it. And I feel like a lot of kids, just based on the format, even though it's on the same platform, but just on the format of the video itself, are not being persuaded by the content in that, just based on how it's communicated. I think the only people who are making this into an issue are folks like us, who may not also have a very huge TikTok presence, that are like, oh, and this other thing that's on TikTok is also a thing that we kind of disagree. It's like, but the people who actually use it don't care.
Right. You may be right, because it's such a ephemeral, that's not the right word, brief. I'm trying to indicate that what happens on TikTok is you get a few seconds of this and then it's gone, and you get another few seconds of something else completely unrelated, and then another few seconds. So there's no permanence to it, and therefore it doesn't seem to have so much impact.
Right.
But I wanted to go into, now we're on this topic, in the US, there's something called Sexy Summer Camp for teenagers, which teaches, allegedly, about sex liberation, gender exploration, BDSM, being a sex worker, and self-managed abortions. So that's what's happening in the US.
Well, being a kid is a bit different to what it was in my day.
Yeah, and just as a heads up, there's also like college classes in Utah that are all about hardcore pornography and being taught in a college class. Doesn't necessarily mean it's being chock full of students. The idea is like Utah, incredibly conservative, even in the school systems that like don't teach like proper science as it should be. So it's sort of like a protest way to make waves in the news by holding a classroom on just hardcore pornography. In the same way, a lot of the summer camps here have religious persuasions that are not necessarily advertised, but are definitely a component once you arrive there and you're like, kids, get off the bus. It's time to pray. It's like, dang it. I thought it was a science camp. It was another religious camp. Dang it. I can't believe I'm here again. So there are things in the U.S. that are about protests, not necessarily avidly attended, but are meant to cause raises of eyebrows just as a point of concern. And I think this is one of them.
Well, the UK isn't excluded from this because there's been a huge storm over a proposed family sex show. It's been stomped on, but this was supposed to be an educational theatrical event that was due to take place at the Norfolk and Norwich Festival in May. And the aim was to teach kids as young as 5 about bodies, sex, and relationships, and it would feature full frontal nudity. And on its website, it encouraged kids to Google masturbating animals so they might see how natural masturbation is.
Give them the full Monty.
There's no possibility of any harm coming from that, is there?
Let's do it like
kids got to learn about it sometime.
Books or something. What was that song? Let's do it like they do on. There was some song that was really popular.
Yeah, I can remember. I can't remember what it was, but you've rung a bell with me. Okay. Moving to Australia, we have the Australian military have chaplaincies. They have chaplains, and they have been. That's the one you like on the Discovery Channel. Thanks, Dred. Yeah. The chaplains are religious. They are legacy chaplains. They were recruited 40 years ago. Many of them, they're still in post. And the problem they're having now is only 20% of current recruits will go to a religious chaplain with their problems because they don't see religion as being relevant. They want to go with their problems to somebody who is secular. And the former director of chaplaincy for the Australian military, he said that the continually focusing on religious-based chaplains meant that the military were failing to meet the well-being needs of their people. And during this interview, he said he shared his story of his journey, how he lost his own faith and became a humanist.
The chaplain did?
Yes.
Okay. That's awesome.
I mean, this is why Humanist UK actually have humanist chaplains, and I'm a humanist chaplain.
Oh, great!
You know, at a mental health acute unit in Salford, which is part of Greater Manchester, and it is important that because most people, probably most people no longer have a religion, but a lot of people have had religion in the past, and it's very notable that people who've had a lot of religion, often when their mental health breaks down and they become psychotic, develop religious delusions. But people who haven't had religion, they often develop sci-fi delusions or something like that.
Alien abduction and whatnot.
And so a lot depends on the sort of crap that gets put into your brain early on in your life as to how your mental health breaks down. Interesting.
Yeah. I'm also a marriage commissioner in British Columbia, so I offer, on behalf of the Ministry of Vital Statistics, the ability for people to get married in a purely secular way. So
great stuff. Yeah, I used to do that in Manchester as well.
I'm starting my training come next month to be a celebrant, a humanist celebrant.
Yeah.
Wedding celebrant, yes.
Oh, well, I was a celebrant from 2012 to 2020. And I've given it up because there are lots of younger, brighter people like yourself, Esther, coming along. And I thought, well, I don't need to do it any longer.
So this is good news, isn't it? That the former Director General of Chaplaincy in Australia has turned humanist and is trying to press for non-religious chaplains to be provided in the military.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, interestingly, a few years ago, I went to a European humanist professionals conference in Belgium, and I discovered there that the Dutch military have 150 chaplains, of whom 37 are humanists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really
the sort of figures we ought to have in not just the British military, but also hospitals, hospices,
yes,
and everywhere and prisons
around the world.
Yeah. I would say the proportion needs to go higher than that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, but 37, I wouldn't quarrel with that.
That's a good starting point.
Yeah.
On that note, I propose to draw the proceedings to a close.
All right. Well,
thank you very much
for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for
Thanks so
coming.
much.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. It wouldn't be much of a show without you, so you're always welcome. And thank you very much to anybody watching us. And please subscribe, tell your friends, set the notifications, all that sort of stuff. Make comments. We'd love to see your feedback. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ramen.